I want to tell you this morning it's my privilege to serve as the Henderson County Republican Party Chairman, and I'm grateful for your support. And as the morning and the luncheon develop, you'll hear a little bit more. I'll share some thoughts with you about what difference we're going to make in this county and hopefully for the balance of the state of North Carolina. Now, to begin with, I'd like to take a moment, and with your help, I'd like to thank the people who helped make this morning possible, particularly in terms of the setup here in this room, in the hallway, the food, the refreshments. And so I'm going to go through a list here. I appreciate your patience for just a second. I'd like, as I call the committee, I'd like the members of the committee to just stand. And then once you've stood, you can sit back down because this could take just a little while. First of all, I've been a part of an executive board and an executive committee over the past year when I became vice chair at last year's convention. And I got to tell you that team has worked very well together, and I'm privileged that going forward, not only is that team intact, we've made a few additions. I'll be replaced as vice chair this time around by Jason Brown, and Candler Willis was kind enough to rejoin us as the second vice chair. And I really appreciate both of you willing to do that. But before we leave the executive board members, I'd like the rest of you to all stand. Jason, Wally, Becky, Candler, Mike, and Melody, if you'll all just stand. And let's give them a round of applause. This is the leadership team. Now, a convention wouldn't be a convention without a report from the audit committee. And I can tell you that at the start of this process versus where we are today, I know our treasurer, Wally Booth, is relaxing and very, very calm now compared to where we might have been at the beginning until the audit committee had done its work. But I'd like to recognize Mike Lewis and Josh Houston on the audit committee. Mike, Josh. All right. See, you get an applause even if you don't stand, but that's a pattern I want to get out of. Let's get back to standing here for a minute. We have a credentials committee. Thank you, Mike. Josh, where's Josh? Yeah, all right. The credentials committee, that most of you, I think all of you, when you came in, you were asked whether you wanted to be a delegate in the conventions that are coming up. The District 11 convention meets every year. This year the convention is at Tuscola High School in Haywood on Saturday, April 26th. The state convention, which is out our way a little bit, out in Cherokee actually, will be the first weekend in June. My understanding that we had at one point this morning about 28 delegates who had signed up to attend those events. But the credentialing of that process was handled this morning by Becky Todd and Susan Meyer. So let's give them a round of applause. And if you're wondering who placed these chairs, where did these standards come from for the precincts, the decorations, we've really kind of transformed, and Doug knows this, I've already told him this, we've transformed this facility this morning. And that just didn't happen. It was the deliberative and hard work of a team that I especially want to recognize now. And I'm going to ask this team, as I called your name, to stand and remain standing until we're finished. You know, in preparing an event like this, you have a whole host of things that have to come together, and they have to be timed well, and they have to be done well. And so let's go through the main room that we're in and the responsibility for the setup and the decorations. Carl Marola. Carl. Peter Davis. Peter Davis, where are you, Peter? They're in the kitchen. They're in the kitchen? What's he doing in the kitchen? He's supposed to be out here. All right, Peter Davis. The decorations here, Doris Hawkins and Melody Heltman. The facility out that we set up in the hallway for the candidates, that's the work of Kathy Willis and my wife, Ruth. And we had someone who was sort of what I would call a pinch hitter, someone who was available to do what work needed to be done. And this team did such a great job that there was a little less opportunity for that than you might expect, but I want to also recognize Loren Booth. Loren? All right, let's move along. We think Republicans ought to lead when it comes to evaluating our primary candidates. And I think the operative language is we the people. So to help that along, this party, working with its counterparts in the men's club and the women's club, will host candidates forums right here in this room beginning Thursday, April the 3rd at 7 p.m. And what I'd like to do at this point in time is I'd like to call out each of those forums, the races associated with them, and the candidates associated with them. Now, I think most of the candidates are sitting along this wall here, and what I'm going to do is when I call out the forum in the race, I'll call your name and have you stand, and if you don't mind, remain standing until we've gotten through the entire forum list. We have 15 individuals who said, I want to wear the Republican jersey after this primary as the party's standard bearer. And we're privileged this morning not only to have them all here, but to give them an opportunity in the near future to really show us why they demand our support. So first of all, Thursday, April the 3rd at 7 p.m. we'll be meeting here, and we'll be entertaining a forum featuring the three candidates for county sheriff, and that's Michael Brown, Sheriff Charlie McDonald, and Eric Summey. On Thursday, April the 10th, same time and place, we'll be hosting a forum featuring the 7 candidates, Republican candidates running for county commissioner. And we'll start off with the District 1 candidates, Hogan Korn, Commissioner Mike Edney, and Andrew Riddle. For the District 3 position, Bill Lapsley and Commissioner Larry Young. And the last but certainly not least, the District 4 race featuring Tim Griffin and Commissioner Tommy Thompson. You know, I like that. You guys are sitting next to each other. Yeah, 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 very nice. Thank you. It's a great example. Thursday, April 17th. We're going to have our final meeting here, again, starting at 7. It'll be more of a hybrid. We've combined 2 races that night. The first race will feature the Register of Deeds, and the candidates running for Register of Deeds, Shannon Baldwin, Ivana Kilpatrick, and Lee King. And certainly on the 17th, there's one more race that we'll be featuring the second half that night, and that will be the race for North Carolina House Seat 117, and that will feature Ronnie Edwards and Representative Chuck McGrady. As I've already said, we thank you all for stepping forward and agreeing to meet with us. We had a little bit of a glitch we had to work through this past week, and I'm pleased to report that every one of the candidates we had the opportunity to work with were completely not only agreeable, but they got to us very quickly. And I really, given what's preceding a convention, I really appreciate that. So we look forward to getting to know all of you better, and hopefully the time we spend here will do just that. Now, I've been asked, Glenn, what do you bring to this role? And I'm going to have more to say about that at luncheon. Frankly, we have a little bit more room at the luncheon than I think we have this morning. But for now, let me answer that by saying simply this. This is our county. It's not Tommy's seat. It's our seat. It's not Mike's seat. It's our seat. It's not Larry's seat. It's our seat. This is our county sheriff. This is our school board. This is our North Carolina legislature, and heaven help us, that's our U.S. Congress in Washington. So whatever the condition of those entities, as it now stands, we live in a constitutional republic. And what that means is it's on our shoulders. When we stay home, when we cast an ill-informed or an uninformed ballot, we get what Colonel West calls the crap sandwich. And you know what? That's what we deserve. Now, race ahead with me to Wednesday, May 7th. That's the day after the election. By that time, this party will have its slate of candidates. And our collective goal is to win every race. And in those instances where our standard bearer faces competition, from the party of Chappaquiddick, Monica Lewinsky, John Edwards, and lest we forget, you can keep your doctor if you want to. That opposition must be defeated. Are you with me on that? And just one more thing in closing. The precinct that we each live in, there are 35 of them total in this county. That's your precinct. Do you know your precinct chair? A number of the precincts you might notice on your standard, there's a little white tag with an X on it. If you notice on your standard there's an X on the base of your standard, you don't have a precinct chair at the present time. And so, here's my question. Are you willing to step into that role, even if it means just for this year? You know, getting out the vote, making sure signs are out, making sure literature is distributed, helping to encourage Republicans to get out. That's really what the precinct chair does. And we could use your help. We have far too many vacancies right now than I would like us to have. And we've had some wonderful people serving in those capacities for years now who, like many of us here today, may feel, you know, I've taken my turn at the wheel. It's someone else's turn. And so what I'm going to ask you to do today before you leave, if you haven't already thought about it now, I want you to look at your standard, see if there's a vacancy for a precinct chair. If the answer is yes, I want you to give this some serious consideration. You don't need any special skills. You just have to be willing to work with other people. And we've got some outstanding precinct chairs who've done that job and have some terrific training that we're going to be looking forward to providing here in the weeks ahead. So before we can save our country, folks, we have to first secure our neighborhoods and our hometown. And that's not my job, that's our job together. And I hope you're with me with that. Do I get a thumbs up for that? Thank you.
Well, good morning, and what an awesome crowd. Thank you for being here. And you know, we've got a lot of things to be proud of from the last year. We moved some mountains this year. We made a great state that much greater. And with that, probably, very, very conceivably, with 6 months of while we were in session in 2013, we arguably did more than a decade in terms of installing some conservative, principled measures. I mean, for over 80 years, it took that long to restructure our tax package. Folks, we've got a simpler tax package, lower rates, lower corporate tax, and we're seeing the benefits, and we'll see more of that as time comes. Some more of the monumental legislation that we were able to install. We had an albatross with unemployment liabilities, 2.5, arguably $2.8 billion liability, and it wasn't getting better. Well, unemployment insurance reform, while it wasn't necessarily popular, was another conservative measure fiscally to improve a tremendous problem that we had. Voter ID, it wasn't easy. Thank you. And thanks to a whole lot of folks sitting amongst us right here to keep the pressure on. And fortunately, we had a little cooperation, believe it or not, at the Supreme Court level to bring a very legitimate voter ID package to our state. so that our vote counts and isn't negated by someone who shouldn't be voting. Anyway, reg reform, that was a huge elephant that we're eating one bite at a time, but we made some major bites out of the elephant when it comes to burdensome regulation that stifles business, job providers. That coupled up with our tax package, we're seeing results. And as time passes, we will see more and more economic good come to our state in the form of job providers so that we can, as people who want to apply our skills, be able to bring revenue into our areas and ultimately improve our quality of life, our standard of living, and make ourselves overall healthier. Those were four major mountains that, thanks to outstanding leadership and conservative principles, are now part of North Carolina's law. But we did a lot more. There were many other items. We had two major military economic bills to protect installations from encroachment and also to protect our training low-level routes for aircraft. You know, everybody knows here I flew many years Air Force airplanes, and I had the privilege of being one of the key individuals to promote that bill. And with that, we protected our military interest. I'll talk about that a little bit more. We also protected the unborn with some major pro-life legislation. It wasn't necessarily well received from the other side, but we got it done. We hope to do more. Another item, protecting the Constitution. Now, there's some folks that didn't necessarily like that, but my Foreign Laws Protect Constitutional Rights bill, I can tell you that some of the subject matter experts that I reach back to on a frequent basis are sitting in this room right now. I greatly appreciate your support, both in expertise and also advocacy. That bill had to make it through the House and the Senate twice, and that's another story, but we got it done, and it is now the law of North Carolina to prohibit the application of foreign laws in our courts if and when an individual's fundamental constitutional right will be compromised by a foreign law in the area of family law. And we got that done. All total, as a freshman, thanks to a lot of support, 6 bills enacted into law, 8 others I served as a primary sponsor for. We protected your privacy in terms of your personal information, protected private property rights. My first bill was one that was really tough. It wasn't necessarily pretty in terms of the resistance that we got, but from a property rights standpoint, it's now our law. Again, we protected military interests, constitutional rights, even a small jobs bill, and 2 that improved education. So it was a phenomenal year, thanks to you, thanks to our local delegation. There is no one, I don't care what their position is, can get something through the House and the Senate and into law through the executive branch by themselves. There's some that can come close, but in the end, our local delegation working together, and I will say also, it's always good to have Senator Tom Apodaca over in the Senate to help stuff. If it can stand on its own 2 feet as solid legislation, it will be guided to where it needs to go, and I greatly appreciate the fact that we have him. Moving forward into 2014, you know, it's a short session. I indeed hope it's short, not from a standpoint of not wanting to work, but we need to go down, fine-tune the budget. We need to make a few tweaks on some of the major initiatives that we did. Anytime you do something major, there's always a few rough edges you need to file off, and we'll do that. We've got some pop-up issues like the coal ash situation that you've read about. It happened on our watch. It was decades in the making. We will deal with that. And then we'll also deal with some education issues that need addressing. Specifically on that, well, it's not done until it's done. Entry-level pay, there seems to be quite a consensus to get it up to the national average. We plan to do that without raising taxes and operating within our revenue means. We'll also work to the extent we can on state employees and overall teacher wages too. You know, we've got a big challenge with Medicaid. So when the April numbers with revenue from taxes start to come in and we get a better picture of that, certainly Medicaid, again, 6, 8 more years ago, our opposition that was in power then shoulda, coulda, woulda, and didn't address some just tremendous challenges that inevitably it's on our watch and we're dealing with them. It's not easy to solve that particular issue when it comes to Medicaid, but we're doing it, and we will operate within our means to do it. Coal ash, things that pop up where you have basins that suddenly rupture and your drinking waters lies into balance. Again, basins that were built before modern regulation that occasionally are having some issues, we indeed are going to address those in a timely, methodical, proactive, well thought out way. This is not a knee-jerk reaction that you simply throw something at to quiet the media. You do it so that it works long term, and we will be doing that. One other issue for the short session, and this will go into 2015 also. Folks, we have the third most active duty members in the military in this state of all 50 states. We are a very, very pro-military state. It's the second largest sector of our economy. But if anybody's watching the news, the Army's talking about going back to an end strength of pre-World War II levels. They just announced that the C-130 unit at Pope Army Airfield is slated for closure. That in and of itself is about $75 million impact on our state's economy. Plus, my brothers in arms, sisters in arms, I'm still actively serving in the military. These are issues that I will be at the heart of, trying to make sure our state fights the battle to the extent that we can at the state level, even though it's mainly a federal issue, to protect our military. Very briefly, as I watch the time, and I have two other items to take care of. Elections. We've had a great year. If we're going to continue to make the conservative corrections that we have installed and others we need to install, we've got to win elections. I mean, that's a no-brainer. I want to not just win them. I want us to win them in convincing manner, because the more we demoralize those who tend to just throw money at problems and have no social values whatsoever, the more we continue to keep people in our camp. So when it comes time to winning, I don't care if it's state, local, or national elections, don't take 2014 for granted. We absolutely have to unlock the gridlock in Washington by winning the North Carolina Senate seat. We've got some great candidates. In terms of the state races here, come November, Senator Apodaca's actually got a worthy opponent. Don't take him for granted. He'll win, but let's make sure he wins big. For myself, I actually have a very formidable opponent who's been posturing for 8 months now as the immediate past chairman of the Democratic Party in Transylvania County. He and his 25 proxies are throwing garbage in the newspaper about conservative principles right and left. So with that, let's not just win, let's work hard and win big. Now, that gets me to this. And as far as the timekeeper, I was told I had a little leeway on the time with this. What we have in our state, a couple months ago, Grady and Doris Hawkins asked if I could get a flag for the headquarters building. They were going to buy it, and I said, hey, thank you, I'll take care of it. So let's give them the credit for the idea. But in doing so, there's two dates on that flag. This flag, our state flag, one represents the dates of the Halifax Resolves, which was certainly a catalyst for other colonies going into the signing of the Declaration of Independence on 12 April 1776 to ultimately support declaring their independence. We also have another date. Now, sometimes people will dispute the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence, and it also dovetails into the Mecklenburg Resolves. That's the 1775 date. What that is important on our flag, that our forefathers, the patriarchs and matriarchs of our state, saw the importance of freedom, independence, and a government bound by a constitution. They found it important enough many, many years ago to put those dates on our flag as a reminder. And it gets back into simply us, what we stand for in this room, operating within the confines of a constitution so that we have our freedoms protected. And with that, Glenn, I know you will fly it, display it proudly. This one has flown over the Capitol. Thank you for the opportunity to get it. Display it proudly.
This gives me an opportunity, just as a reminder, we have a new footprint on 3rd Avenue. at 144 3rd, just next door to where the party used to be a number of years ago. And the site is coming together, and we're pleased with the progress so far. I don't have enough information yet as far as when we will have our grand opening. We're expecting that will occur shortly after the primary election, but I do want you to know that this flag is going to be proudly displayed in the window on 3rd Avenue, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and introduce our next speaker. Folks, all that stuff I talked about, and there's a whole lot more behind it, would not have been possible with outstanding leadership in our House and our Senate, and for that matter, across the board. After 140 years of having one obstacle or another to conservative principles, we had a chance to do some major items. I want that chance again, and with that, we have to win elections. The Speaker of the House, House of Representatives, Speaker Thom Tillis, now U.S. Senate candidate, which is a race we absolutely have to win. And it's very plausible for the Senate to go back in the majority of Republican conservative control. Our state absolutely has to win that. So with that, I'd like to introduce an individual who is extremely sharp and is the reason so many of the items that came from the House of Representatives found their way successfully through the Senate and to the governor's signature, or if it had to go another way, veto override, is Speaker of the House, Senate candidate Thom Tillis.
Good morning, everybody. I want to thank Chris for all of his hard work. You know, he was talking about that foreign laws bill, which started in the House, had to get passed. We liked it so much we passed it twice. But we got it done, and I think it's very important because it has to do with, you know, protecting our nation, and something I'll talk about briefly. I'm happy to be in Henderson County. I was in Transylvania earlier. I was down in Buncombe before that, and this is a light day. I've only got about 3 or 4 events, and now I get home, go home, take a rest tomorrow. We're moving to a new house. I see Chuck McGrady here. Chris and Chuck are 2 outstanding examples of the kind of leadership that we've had to get done everything that we were going to do. Back in 2010, when we were running to try and convince you all that we could get to a majority, we made a lot of promises. And then when we got there, we had hundreds of Democrats protesting every single day, trying to prevent us from actually moving forward with the agenda that we committed to every one of you. But the fact of the matter is we fulfilled all those promises. We cut taxes to historic levels. We cut spending. We cut regulations. We did medical malpractice reform. We passed the marriage amendment that gave you an opportunity to vote to enshrine traditional marriage in the Constitution. We passed 3 pro-life bills, 3 Second Amendment friendly bills, and every one of those bills I mentioned have one thing in common. They started in the House of Representatives. The Senate worked hard on it, but we got it started because it was a priority. It was critically important to me as the Speaker and to all of my members to fulfill those promises. I know there's a publication out there. If you haven't seen it, I'd encourage you to get it. This document, Raleigh Digest, summarizes all the extraordinary things we've done over the last 3 years. And it is amazing. And it's not something you're going to see in the Asheville Citizen-Times. I don't know about you all, but they don't seem to be too friendly to conservative ideas. Representative Moffitt tried to do a good job of inserting this in about 11,000 copies and got it out to people. I think it caught some of the editor's hair on fire, but it'll tell you about a lot of good things that we've done. And now, back in 2006, when I got elected to the House, I said I was going to term limit myself and not run more than 4 terms. That's when we were in the minority. There was no idea I had at all that we'd be to a majority and I'd be Speaker of the House. But this was going to be my last term no matter what. And about 14 months ago, I decided to run for the U.S. Senate. And the reason I decided to run for the U.S. Senate is the same reason I decided to quit my job at IBM and run to get us to a majority in 2009. The Democrats were destroying this state, and we had an opportunity to turn it around. And I knew it was going to take time to recruit candidates and raise money for them so we could get them elected, and that's what I did. And about 14 months ago, I started looking at this race, and Kay Hagan, who votes 96% of the time with Harry Reid and with Barack Obama. And I decided that we had to do the same thing in 2014 that we did, North Carolina did, for the country. We have to win a majority in the U.S. Senate. And North Carolina is the 6th seat. We have 45 senators now that are likely to get reelected, and we have about 7 seats that are potentially in play. And by everybody's measure, North Carolina will be the deciding race. It's going to be a race that will run about $100 million between now and November in cost, about $40 or $50 million per side. And for the last year, I've been trying to do everything I could to build a volunteer network of a couple of thousand people in the state, but to also build the network that you need to match the labor unions, Harry Reid and Barack Obama, eye to eye in terms of having the money and the organization and the plan to do our part to win a majority. When I go to Washington, I'm going to have the same priorities that I've had since I've been in the North Carolina House. We have to cut taxes. We have to cut regulations. We've got to protect and heal our economy. We've got to protect and heal our culture. We've got to go back to the Judeo-Christian values that made this country great and reassert them in everything we say and do in Washington. We need to protect life. We need to be unapologetic as a culture of saying to the rest of the world that America is the exceptional nation among nations. There is no greater superpower. There is no kinder nation. There has never been a superpower that when we go into another country, we do it to protect them and free them. And what we start doing the minute we get there is figure out how soon we can get out. That is not an empire. That's a country that loves freedom and wants everybody else across the world to experience the same freedom that we do. We also need to protect our people. And President Obama has failed on every single level. How on earth can you look at Middle Eastern nations like Iran and Syria and treat them like they have an equal seat at the table? They don't. But he does. How on earth can you let Vladimir Putin annex a country, a sovereign nation? But this president does. He's weakened our stature in the globe, and that makes the world less safe. We have to protect our people, and we have to protect freedom-loving people all over the world. When I get elected as senator, I'm going to do that. I'm also going to hold the other senators on the Republican side up to a higher standard for leadership. I've told many senators, I have 20 supporting my campaign so far, I expect more, that when I get there, I'm going to have the same attitude towards them that I had to my Republican colleagues when I came in the minority. We got to do better. We need to make promises, and we need to fulfill those promises. And I think if we can do that, we'll win this Senate race, and we'll start turning this country around. I see one other person in the audience that I also want to recognize because I learned a lot from her when she was serving in the House, and that's Carolyn Justice up here up front. But I tell you, I have a lot of optimism, and I think this race needs to be about optimism. I went out to a Republican group about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and after I got finished, a lady came up to me and she said that she liked what I had to say, she was going to vote for me, but she really thought it was too late. She thought that the Democrats and President Obama have taken this country to a low that we can't fully recover from. And I said, ma'am, I don't believe that. And the reason I don't believe that is I've seen it happen before. Now, before I talk about that, I have to tell you all what we're up against. Y'all know about 4 weeks ago, President Obama was voted the 6th greatest president of all time. George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Ronald Reagan, 39 tied for 4th place, Jimmy Carter, and Barack Obama. Did you all think, and the reason I say that, did you all think, many of you around here were alive when Jimmy Carter was driving this nation into the ground? Do you ever think we'd have a president that was worse than Jimmy Carter? But we do. But the reason I tell you all that story is that, and the reason I responded to the lady the way I did, was I said I've seen it turn around before. In 1979, I was living on my own in a trailer park and working in a warehouse. I didn't go to school or college. Graduated from high school and went to work because that's what a family of 6 kids did in my time. You got a high school diploma and you went to work. I went on to attend 5 different colleges and get a degree. But when I was that 19-year-old kid working in a warehouse, we had all the bad things that are going on now. Russia, the Middle East, oil, unemployment, felt the same way. We were down to that same depth. But then an election happened, and a leader came on the stage, and leaders in Congress got together, and over a few short years, we waged the war against the Soviet Union in the Cold War, and we won it. We turned the economy around and had some of the most prosperous times in all of our lifetimes. We rose to the most exceptional nation, respected nation in the globe. So I said, ma'am, I know it can be done. If we win this race, if we get a majority and we hold the Republicans up to the standard of working together and fulfilling promises, we will succeed. And I believe that we need to have that optimism, and we need to recognize that the threat is great and the threat is very real. The Democrats have already spent $2 million attacking me. You've probably already seen the ads. $2 million, Harry Reid, the most money spent in any state, the first money spent by Democrats in any state, $1 million in negative attack ads against me. And then the so-called Patriot majority, sounds like one of us, is actually a clever name for a liberal organization funded primarily by labor unions, has spent another $1 million attacking me. They know that I can beat Kay Hagan. They know if they see me on the ballot in November, then they're likely looking at the 51st senator in the U.S. Senate. And I'm going to do everything I can, as I did as the campaign finance chair in 2010, to convince you all to vote for me in the primary and to have you be there for us when we win in November. And then I'll do everything I can to fulfill every single promise I've made in the same way that I have as your Speaker of the House. So I appreciate y'all being here in the morning. You know, y'all are the bedrock of our party. Y'all are the reason why we did all the great things we did in 2010, precinct meetings, county meetings, state party apparatus. The grassroots are the way you win elections on the ground. And I thank you for what you're doing, because you're unique in being here. It means you love this state and you love this nation. I do too. I want to make it greater. I want to make it the unquestioned, exceptional, superpower, freedom-loving leader of the world. And with your help, we can do it. Thank you all for being here today. God bless North Carolina, and God bless America.
Ladies and gentlemen, a couple of things real fast. There was an oversight. There was a name that was not on our printed list. We need to correct, and we need to recognize Lisa Edwards, who's on our school board. Lisa, where are you this morning? Lisa, in the back here. Lisa, thank you very much. And sorry about that. Listen, are there any other elected leaders that we did not mention? And certainly that's not intentional, but anybody else that's here that we have not, identified you and recognized you this morning? Do we have anyone at all? I want, real quickly, Judge Levinson, who we recognized here a moment ago, has come a long way to be with us. Judge, if you want to, and I don't want you to feel compelled, but we'd like you to say a couple words if you'd like to. Yes. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, let's give Judge Levinson a welcome, and let's listen to him a moment.
Greg, thank you very much, and I will be very brief. And frankly, it's difficult to go right after Tom, but it's so good to be in Western North Carolina. And frankly, every time I'm out in Western North Carolina, I wonder why I don't live here. In fact, and I just love it out here so much, and I understand why you enjoy this area so much. In fact, as I was coming in with Judge Thalheimer, who is sort of with me and sort of suffering through the entire day with me today, because we've got a lot of places that we're going, a lot of driving to do. I told Ben on the way in that my favorite single place to hold court is Henderson County. And I don't say that anywhere else. It is because of the Greg Newmans of the world. It is because of the people of this county. And it's reflected through that courthouse institution that you have here, obviously very central, important institution that we have, that you have here in Hendersonville. So very good to be with you. I just want to take just a brief moment, and I will share with you a couple things. Every day in our civil courts and our criminal courts, judges of all sort make constitutional decisions, whether they're in a civil courtroom, whether they're in a criminal courtroom. But the 7 members of the Supreme Court of North Carolina have a special relationship to that document that we know of as the North Carolina Constitution. It is the 7 members of the Supreme Court of North Carolina who are ultimately responsible for the application and the interpretation of that very important document that recognizes our sovereignty. And it is true that I'm asking you to have faith in me to work with the Paul Newbys of the world and the Mark Martins of the world and the Bob Edmonds of the world in order to hold that sacred responsibility. And let me say this. I've been very blessed and privileged to be a member of the judiciary, frankly, since 1996. District and Family Court judge, North Carolina Court of Appeals judge, presently as a Superior Court judge. But the greatest blessing that I have ever had and the greatest public service blessing that I've ever had was when Alberto Gonzales and the Bush administration asked me to lead the civilian rule of law team into Iraq and Afghanistan during that 2007 and 2008 period of time. While I have the great benefit of being a member of the judiciary and serving in a way that hopefully fulfills needs, that was my greatest privilege and honor to serve in Iraq and Afghanistan for you and for the Bush administration. Let me say this, as you're looking at your candidates for the court, I will share with you this, and then I promise you I'll sit down. 3 years of technical training as a lawyer, 3 years of law school, do not qualify me to make the types of decisions that we hire our congressmen, our state senators, state representatives to make. It's a very simple, fundamental concept. And frankly, it's frightening to me that everyone doesn't share that view, that our court's influence is limited, and that while I'm accountable to you, as all public officials have a measure of responsibility to everyone, I am accountable in a different way than your elected representatives are, those that we send to Raleigh and those that we send to Washington to make our public policy decisions. All of us have an obligation as citizens to help hold the Constitution on our shoulders. All of us do as citizens. Judges have a special relationship with respect to making sure that our rights are vindicated, that the guilty are punished, and to adjudicate disputes in a way that comports with the law. I will share with you that I'm a constitutional conservative. This is who I have been in my heart since day one, and I am a Republican at heart. It is my request of you that you consider my candidacy for the Supreme Court this year. I'm going to be joining you for lunch today and hope to have a chance to chat with all of you. And I will share with you this. I have 3 very simple commitments to you should I go and join Paul Newby and the rest of those fine people in Raleigh at the Supreme Court. Honest public services, consistency, and a commitment every day to doing everything I can to reach the correct result in all of those matters that come before the court. I am very blessed and privileged to be with you here today. Frankly, don't be surprised if I end up moving down the street from you at some point. I usually stay over in Flat Rock when I'm in town holding court. But I got to tell you, too, that I think the world of this gentleman, Greg, he's just behind the stretch there. Can we give him a round of applause as your district attorney? And I think the world of him, his staff, and all the good folks of Henderson County. But thank you very much for having me and allowing me to address you for a few moments this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Levinson. We also wanted to recognize this morning, and he's very unassuming, Don Guerin. Where are you, Don? He's outside. Don Guerin, of course, who served in the State House and represented this area for many years. We're glad to have Don, of course, this morning. Listen, I'm with Speaker Tillis, and you're going to hear from somebody that will echo that we should feel very hopeful about turning things around. The president talked here recently, and he was talking about healthy living and health care, and he was talking to a group of school kids recently. And just to give you an idea about some credibility issues he has, he was talking to these kids about eating right, you know. He said that broccoli's his favorite food, and the kids, you know, they believed him. And then he said, you know, this Obamacare thing, young people, he said, this is going to reduce the deficit. And all the kids started, they busted out laughing. So he's got some issues. I think we're going to be okay. Okay, they're still. Yeah, tough crowd. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed an honor and a privilege to introduce to you our state senator, who is really one of the most capable and certainly one of the most influential political leaders that we have in the state of North Carolina, and he's right here from our own home. So it's great to have with us this morning Senator Tom Apodaca. Senator.
Thank you. It is really good to be home. I see a lot of familiar faces. Were any of y'all with the Moral Monday group that came down to Raleigh? I don't see any hands, so I guess not. Well, I don't know where I recognize you from. No, truly, it is good to be home. It's been a heck of a year since I saw you last at this convention. It's been a great year for North Carolina. I'm not, lucky for y'all, I'm not going to speak long today because I got to do this again in here Wednesday morning, and I hope to go at length and go over what we've done in Raleigh. So, you know, I know you can hardly wait, but I hope you're with me Wednesday morning, and we'll try to present it to you. There are a couple of things I do want to mention, though, while we're here, and I think it's appropriate that Judge Levinson is with us today, because I feel the most important races we'll have in November are our state judicial races for the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. Folks, we don't give them much attention, but I'm telling you, they affect our lives more than Congress in Washington, the General Assembly in Raleigh. They can make decisions that affect every one of us in here and can set back anything we've done to better North Carolina and move it forward. So we really, really need to become involved in that. And I think we saw that in the last election for the Supreme Court. And, you know, that was a key race for us. And it was wonderful that we won it, and it's made a big difference. Because, let me tell you something. This is something we need to brag about as Republicans. For the first time, I think, I know 30 years, but maybe 40 years, there has not been one piece of the Redistricting Act overturned. Not one. Not a precinct has been redesigned. That's unheard of. We don't hear that on television. We don't see that in the newspapers. And what we are witnessing in Raleigh, what we really do see is everyone going to the courts. So we've wounded the other side, and they're having a hard time accepting it. And instead of the election booth, they're trying to get us into courts, and we're having to fight those battles. So that makes it even more and more important that we have good jurists on the bench. So just pay attention to that. It's so important, and I can't stress that enough. And I'm going to stop there with Raleigh at this point, and I want to introduce you to someone who really doesn't need an introduction. Other than myself or Jeff Miller, Mark Meadows was a good congressman, so he decided to run. But seriously, Mark has done one heck of a job, and he has put us on the map for good things. He has hit the ground running as a freshman, and the Apodaca family always being indebted for him hiring our son. So without anything else, I'd like to introduce Congressman Mark Meadows.
Thank you, guys. Oh, you're too good. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. No, please keep your seat. I tell you, I love you guys, and you are family to me, and it is so good to be here in Henderson County, and it's so good to be here talking about America, because I want to encourage you today to not grow weary in well-doing, but also to continue to keep the faith until we can restore the trust back in our government. Because I know many of us don't have much trust in the government. Lois Lerner, doesn't have a way of helping us have trust in our government, does she? But I also want to let you know we're having an oversight and government reform hearing next week. And in the coming days, you will find that we will hold her in contempt of Congress, and we will start to restore our trust again. You know, it's been very interesting to see how Western North Carolina really has responded to just the American dream. Because when I look around this room, many of you I can call by name. Many of you are not only supporters, but your friends. And when I look at that friendship and what it's all about, when you try to serve in a way that is about talking with and supporting the people you love, it takes on a whole new meaning. You know, when there have been several things that have affected me over the last 14 months, one of those happened right here in Henderson County when I came and watched farmers who had lost everything because of a flood. Some of them we cried in the fields together because there was not much hope left. And it really impacted me in such a way that I said, you know, what happens is every time we start to do something, it has an impact on somebody else. So I look around, many of you on the walls are either in public service or are running for office, and I just want to applaud you for being willing to get in the game. All the things they say about you will not be positive. In fact, they'll post a lot of things on Facebook that they would never say to your face. And when we've started to see this, though, America is greater than any one party. You know, when we were born, we were not born Republicans or Democrats, even though some of us may have thought so. We were born into a country blessed enough to be able to call ourselves Americans. And we must never forget that. Right now in the Ukraine, there is a battle going on for those that love freedom. And here you have a dictator in Putin who is trying to stomp out the freedom-loving people of the Ukraine, and he's creating a very difficult situation. Now, that situation is made more difficult because we have not taken a firm stand on what we stand for and who we are, and we must do that, and we must change it. And I am here to tell you that you've got a lot of great candidates running for U.S. Senate, and I need some help. We got over 190 bills sitting on Harry Reid's desk that would put people back to work, would lower energy costs, would make sure that our nation is more secure, and yet they sit there on his desk because he is in the majority. So I want to encourage you to get out with the passion that you have to support the candidate that you have, and we've got a number of them that are here. And I want you to, with all that passion, get out and work as hard as you possibly can until May 6th. But after May 6th, when we have a nominee, I need you to have the same passion and go with the same fervor to make sure that we send Kay Hagan home. Now the problem is there are some of those candidates that we are not as supportive of, and I can look around and I know many of you. I know your politics, and there's depending on who gets nominated on one side or the other, you're going to want to take your ball and go home. But this needs to be a referendum on sending one person to the minority, and that one person is Harry Reid. And we need to do that and make sure that we do that. Because when you talk about caring about our values, really, Harry Reid, he could care less about the people of Western North Carolina. And I hate to say that about anybody, but the most powerful person in Washington, D.C. is not the President of the United States. It is truly the leader of the Senate. And when you have someone who is more interested in politics and holding it up, for political gain, people get hurt. But I am also confident of this thing, is that the men and women that I can call friends in this room and across Western North Carolina, I've seen your resolve. I've seen the fact that you're willing to get up and fight again. I've seen the fact that many times what happens is you have a disappointment in an election. And 2012 I was glad that they called my race early, is all I can say. Because after that, it became very discouraging. But can you imagine what we could do if we have the Senate, and in 2016, we have the White House? You know, it is time. It is time that we reload. It's time that we are reminded of the fact that men and women have fought for freedom. When we start to look at our military and the way that it's about to be gutted because we think that we live in a safe environment, I'm here to tell you that we don't. There are almost unanimous votes in countries far away. They want what we have, but they hate who we are. And we need to recognize that, guys, because, you know, this is a battle of who we are, and men and women have lost their lives and shed their blood so that we could wave a flag, sing the Star-Spangled Banner, but more importantly, that we can enjoy those freedoms that the Constitution and our founding fathers promised us that we should fight to defend. I want to close with two stories because I promised that I would keep you on schedule. And the most pressing question that I get is Greta as nice as she appears on TV? And the answer to that is she's actually nicer than that. She cares about, and here's her philosophy. She says, if it's important to the people in Appleton, Wisconsin, which is where she's from, then it should be important to most of America. And that's the way that I view things. If it's important to the people in Henderson County, Western North Carolina, and throughout, then it probably is important to the majority of Americans. Because when you're in Washington, D.C., they have a totally different view of what efficient and accountable is all about. Can you imagine that? You know, we have billions of dollars, well over $100 billion that we spend on an annual basis that we don't know where it goes. Now, we don't know where it goes. Now, eventually that adds up to real money, and so we need to start to rein that in. You know, we can't just keep writing checks that our grandkids and our great-grandkids are going to have to repay. We can't do that. We have a responsibility. And if I were to ask most of you in terms of the American dream, if I were to ask you about your parents and said, well, when you were growing up, would they say that you were going to have it better than they had it? Almost every one of your parents would say, yes, my children are going to have it better than I had it. But if I ask that same question today of parents, there's not as many hands that go up. There's not as many people who believe that our kids are going to have it much better than we have it. But I also want to say that we've been here before. And because Jimmy Carter said our best days were behind us, and Ronald Reagan came in and said that that is not true. He limited government. He limited the way that we do functions. He actually was a man of principle. If you remember, here was a guy who represented unions, came into office, and one of his first things he did was take on the FAA and their union and say, if you don't go to work, we're going to send you home. They didn't believe him. Guess what happened? They went home. That's what we need to do. We need to be leaders who say what they mean and mean what they say. And that's where we need to be. I'm here to say thank you so much for your support. Thank you for your encouraging words. I can't tell you that there have been days when I thought that the fight was too great. And I get an email from one of you or get a text or something and you've just said, you know, continue the fight. I've gotten more advice since I've been in Congress, I can tell you that. But I also want to say that our nation is truly worth fighting for. And it is not a lost cause, guys. It is not a lost cause. So I close with this story. In 1812, the War of 1812, the British came in. They burned the White House. They burned the Capitol. There's bullet holes still in the stairs in the Capitol that remind us of that day when they came in and they looked to take it over. And there it was, a battle that raged on for more than 2 years. And in 1813, for $405, they commissioned this big flag. It was 40 by 32 feet. It was so big that what they wanted to do is be able to hoist it so the British would be able to see that the red, white, and blue was flying. Well, that flag ultimately got flown over Fort McHenry. Most of you know the rest of the story, and that story is where our Star-Spangled Banner came from. Because after 25 hours of bombardment of bomb after bomb after bomb after bomb, in the dawn, that early dawn, Francis Scott Key looked out, and there it was, still waving, still flying. The flag of surrender was not there. There was not a single person who had put up the surrender flag. But the rest of the story that doesn't get told very often is about 22 patriots. 22 patriots who took their boats and sunk them in the Baltimore harbor. 22 patriots who probably depended on those boats for a living. And as they sunk those boats, they really may have been giving up their livelihood. But what happened is their neighbors and their friends say, why would you be sinking your boats for a lost cause? Perhaps some of you are hearing that you're fighting for a lost cause. But just like with those 22 patriots that sunk their boat in that harbor, the reason why we are able to sing the Star-Spangled Banner to that flag that represents freedom is because the British couldn't get close enough to Fort McHenry to make the shelling actually work, because there was something in the harbor that would not allow their warship to get there. 22 patriots. And so I look out today, I've got more than 22 patriots here. And if you're willing to stand with me, we will take back this country, because it is not a lost cause. And I think it's time that we sink somebody else's boat in the name of Harry Reid. How about that? God bless you. God bless America. Good to see you.
Can you hear now? Should I pick this up? How's this? I'm glad to be here. I've come up this hill many times in 10 minutes. Oh, this is great. My wife went to Montreat Anderson, and I was a high school kid and got some basketball offers and went down to Chapel Hill and played for a summer with Dean Smith's boys, Billy Cunningham and all. Took one course, and Greg, it was an analytical trig course. I made a 47. I decided this may not be the place for me. Wake Forest must be easier. So the day before classes, I called Coach McKinney. He still had a scholarship. But my wife, and one reason I went to Wake Forest, because it's a whole lot closer than Chapel Hill to Montreat. And I'll admit that. For years, ladies, I couldn't admit I was in love, and I would do all that for a woman, but I did. Isn't that nice? But it took 3 or 4 hours to get up here to Montreat. But believe me, and Ruth Graham, of all people, was Sandra's Sunday school teacher. And the whole thing, it was just such a glorious place. But I hated it, because my sweetheart was up here. We went to Germany and came back and went back to visit. And I said, you know, Sandra, this is the most beautiful place in the world now. We have 6 grandchildren. We live in Lexington. I've lived in Lexington all my life. And notwithstanding what I thought about Dean Smith, I didn't think he'd win any games, but he did. And then Bones McKinney was gone a year later, and I didn't play much basketball after that, but I did get a good education at Wake Forest. I was county chairman in Lexington at Davidson County. My father was in the House for 12 or so years. He passed away after I went to practice law with him. Since that time, we reared 2 daughters, and I've run in several political campaigns. including Elizabeth Dole beat me for the Senate. I came in second to her. I was your nominee for Lieutenant Governor with Patrick Valentine. We almost won, and thank you very much for your help during those years. It's difficult being elected to high office. We have wonderful candidates in this race. We become good friends. We respect each other, and I wouldn't be here were it not for Dr. Brannon reminding me. I didn't think we'd get finished in Winston-Salem in time, and then I get to walk right in and get to make a 25-minute speech. Was that what it was? During the last 20 years or so, I found something to do, or Sandra found something to do for me. I started writing books, about one a year, and that makes about 19. I'm not bragging about that. It's just kind of weird if you're going to spend that much time writing 3.5 million words in 6,700 pages. But I say that to say this. I have been psychologically, not intentionally, but psychologically, I think, preparing myself for this time. In everything I've done, as a kid in the first grade, running for president of the class, or in high school at Lexington, or in the Moorhead Scholarship interviews. By the way, ladies, I gave that up for Sandra too. Would you impressed? With all that going on, I felt had an opportunity to write some legal treatises. Found ways to write them quickly. I wrote one. I don't mean to be bragging about this, but I'm getting somewhere. The corporate treatise is 1,000 words. I wrote it in 5 days. And I say that to tell you this, that I prepare myself to know how to do things in a simple, direct way and get the job done. Within those books is a complicated a dictionary, a book entitled A Lawyer Prays God's Will for His Client, a book after I ran against Elizabeth Dole. 2 days later, I'm waking up in the bed where I usually wake up. And with a conservative mind, a new model for government went right across my brain. I said, no, Lord, not another book. Well, 2 days, I had to spit that one out. It is endorsed by Jesse Helms and Locke Faircloth, and it sets out my dream and my vision for an America. Well, after the last lieutenant governor's race, with the economy falling apart as it did, I had to go to work for a change and really work hard, and never dreamt that this would happen. Then last year, I had every kind of illness you could have, non-life-threatening, thank the Lord. Had surgery. I'm explaining why I'm late getting in this race. Had surgery at Thanksgiving, non-life-threatening. 5 days before we filed, I did not have the energy to drive to Asheville. And I kept waiting and waiting. Sandra didn't want me to sign up, but I have. We're raising no money. I'm going based on old time's sake and name recognition, I hope, and hope some of you will remember that I have something to say in this race. Now, on to the issues. There was a public policy poll that first came out after we all signed up to do this that found that there were 6 of our good candidates who at that time would not defeat Senator Hagan. One of the 2 who would is standing before you. And the percentages were Kay Hagan 43% and Jim Snyder 44%. That was 2 days after I signed up, and nobody knew I was running. I'm not boasting about that, but you know that I put, well, this is my 7th race. Mr. Lincoln had 8. I hope you won't make me wait that long a time. I've got to tell you this image Carl Sandburg painted of Lincoln going across the prairie of Illinois in a buggy, a lawyer, a sole practitioner, just like, I'm not Lincoln, but just like me. In 3 months, he became 1/3 of the federal branch of our government. That's how great this country is, where a poor lawyer like me, or even a physician or ministers, can have this opportunity. I want to tell you a few facts, and a few facts only. If I had defeated Elizabeth Dole, and people like me had gone to Washington, you would not have seen the North American Free Trade Agreement passed. When I go to work, I almost cry. I look to the left over the railroad tracks, and there are 16 acres of vacuous, empty warehouses, furniture plants, the largest bedroom furniture manufacturer in the world, gone. Textile companies gone. 5,000 jobs in my town of 20,000 people. We were decimated by Washington, Republicans and Democrats voting for the North American Free Trade Agreement. What's our country coming to? What in the world is our country? And then New York, Wall Street. If I and others like me had been in Washington, we would not have let the rich bankers gamble via credit default swaps and derivatives and throw our country almost into a depression. And when you go down into a depression, you don't have money to pay your military. When you don't have, it's like that commercial, Geico. When you don't have money to pay your military, well, you can't protect your freedoms. And then, I'm in Baptist Hospital, and I'm so mad. I'm not feeling very well after my surgery, but I said, if I can just get myself up out of this hospital bed. I was so mad. Has anyone ever heard of rendition, a euphemism for torture? You know, over half of our people think it's okay. When I grew up watching the Cowboys and Indians, the bad guys did that. Waterboarding. Republicans and Democratic presidents indicating that this kind of torture against our enemies in the name of freedom, when you start doing stuff like that, folks, there's something rotten in Denmark. And I think there has been. Something that drives Dr. Brannon and me, particularly, and probably the other candidates as well. There was almost nothing happening for the babies. 54 million unborn children since Roe v. Wade. As a lawyer, I took a case to the U.S. Supreme Court that followed the DiDonato case that had an 8-pound baby in utero, and they said this was not a person who could bring a wrongful death action. I said, it was too. So the Court of Appeals knocked me down. The Supreme Court finally passed and said, yes, Mr. Snyder, you are right. This is a human being. 54 million children euphemistically aborted, truly stated, destroyed, and we still sit here doing almost nothing. Well, I promise you, when I get to Washington, I and others like me are going to attack Roe v. Wade, and we're going to see that we turn this thing around, and the babies of this world who should be born are going to be born just like the Lord intended that to be. Ladies and gentlemen, we again have such, in conclusion, such outstanding folks. We have a minister, we have outstanding physicians, one of whom delivered a baby last night. You know, that would be amazing stuff. Greg is a sole practitioner, just like I am. But don't take this pejoratively. What you need is someone who has been fighting in court for people and arguing and in law school for 43 plus 3 years. What you need is someone to go to Washington and fight for you. What you need is a trained fighter, and I stand before you as a trained fighter. 3 broken noses playing for Bones McKinney, sticking my nose in places where it shouldn't go. If you elect me, I promise you I'll go to Washington. I will fight for you. I will stand up for you. I will not let a NAFTA happen. I will not let credit default swaps happen. I will take care of the babies, and we'll join together as a grand army, bringing our country back to where it should be. Folks, I have a vision for America that's so bold that no one can doubt her, so good that no one can hate her, so godly that no one can fear her, so rich that no one can buy her, and so strong that no one would ever try her. I have a vision for America that's like a city set on a hill, a light and beacon for all the world to see. And I'll leave you with this. I promise you that if you'll elect Jim Snyder to the U.S. Senate, liberals will never control our lives, government will never control our freedoms, and freedom will always, always ring loudest in these United States of America. Thank you all, and God bless America.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. Hold on. We'll try to keep this 10 minutes. It is unusual for us to get 10 minutes, and I do appreciate that because sometimes it's hard to convey everything in 2 minutes. My name is Ted Alexander, and I'm running for U.S. Senate. I'm running to be your public servant. TedForSenate.com. I love North Carolina. This is my home. I was born and raised here. I was born in Morganton, North Carolina. I now live in Shelby for the last 25 years with my wife, Patty, who's with me, by the way, today. And I have been blessed with so many experiences growing up here and in this country. I remember when I was growing up, I went to Glen Alpine Elementary School. And in the 1968 election, which dates me, our second grade teacher, Miss Waller, we asked her, we said, what is the difference between a Republican and a Democrat? And she, I think in her wise, very even-handed way said, well, you know, Democrats like more government and they like to spend money. And Republicans like less government and like to save money. And I thought then and there at that time, I said, you know, we don't have a whole lot of money in our household. I think I like to save money. I must be a Republican. So, but you know, I went to school, graduated Freedom High, went to UNC Charlotte, graduated there with a degree in political science, and then had the opportunity to go to graduate school. I was the first in my family that was able to get a college degree in either a bachelor's and a master's. I went to Cornell there in New York State. And, you know, I met my wife, Patty, at UNC Charlotte through InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. And I'm a Christian, and this is what informs my worldview.
But, you know, it hurts my heart when I see the country the way it is right now. I'm 53 years old, as I said, and I have never seen our situation quite like where we are right now. And this is what motivated me to run. When I see that Obamacare has basically taken over 1/6 of our economy, when I see that our debt and deficits are so high in numbers that we can barely imagine those numbers anymore. In fact, by the time that I'm finished this speech, 10 minutes, we will be $10 million more in debt, and each one of us will owe about $55,000 each. We see a situation now where our president is proposing a military that would basically be cut to pre-World War II levels. My sister serves in the Air Force. She's 20 years now and a major. My father served in the Navy. And it's unconscionable to me that we would be putting our military back to those levels. We have an attorney general who tells us that he is only going to enforce the laws that he wishes to enforce, and that he's otherwise telling other attorneys generals that they only need to enforce the laws that they like. And then we have a vice president. See, I don't even have to say anything. We have a vice president who then basically says, you don't have to work, that we will take care of you. And, you know, then we have a situation where our regulations are so much now that we are regulated everything from the one-size-fits-all Common Core curriculum all the way down to the kind of light bulbs that we can use. And we also, as a Christian, people of faith who hold Judeo-Christian beliefs, that those fundamental foundational beliefs that have brought our country to the greatness that it is, we are now told that we don't have a place, that we don't have a voice, that we should not have a voice because we disagree with the elite. And that furthermore, we're part of the problem because we hold to pro-life, because we hold to pro-traditional marriage. And we're told that we're haters because of this. This is not the country that we're all accustomed to knowing. In this election, you have a choice. There are 8 fine candidates, any of which one would be far superior than what we have right now in the U.S. Senate. You have and I believe in the final analysis that you will find that you will see that I want to have your trust, and I have your trust, I hope, the experience and the determination to go to Washington, to work hard as I possibly can, to roll up my sleeves, to do the job, and not become one of them. When I ran for mayor of Shelby, and I served 2 terms, and I term limited myself after serving 2 terms as mayor of Shelby, there were 2 things that basically I ran on. One was the reduction of crime. When I started, our crime rate was the 2nd or 3rd highest, depending on how you looked at it, in the state in terms of crime and violent crime for a city our size. We were not the city of pleasant living, as we are called. And the second thing I said I would do is work on job creation and economic development. And I've done both. I did both of those things. I kept my word. By the time I left as mayor, we had reduced our crime rate to the lowest in 30 years. When I said I would work on economic development and jobs, we did just that. We literally saved PPG Industries, which is our largest employer and had 5 furnaces and our largest natural gas user in the city of Shelby. When I was running for initially, we had a panel where we had questions. And one of the questions was, what are you going to do when PPG closes? And I felt that was just totally unacceptable, that we were not going to just stand by and watch our largest employer close. So we worked over the next year or 2. Immediately when I started being mayor, we immediately started working with PPG. And lo and behold, we worked out a creative arrangement with them about a year or 2 later where we actually saved 660 jobs. They're now fully operating with 5 furnaces of the 5 furnaces they have. And I'm very proud of that fact. And then we worked on other things, such as we recruited Baldor, Clearwater Paper. We created the Foothills Commerce Center there, along with our county commission there in Cleveland County. We recruited Schletter, which is a job producer that has created 270 jobs. Because I believe firmly in agriculture, and it's our largest industry in North Carolina, I started our first agritourism initiative, which has really paid off. We have a farmer's market now that is locally based, And I'm really proud that we were able to get that done and really highlight the importance of our agriculture in Cleveland County. We recruited films like the Hunger Games. And you can come and actually see where they filmed, what is it, number 12, District 12. We filmed, Blood Done Sign My Name was another movie that we recruited. We worked closely with the private sector to encourage the creation of the Don Gibson Theater and the Earl Scruggs Center, and I would encourage you to come see those two great venues that are in our uptown area there. And then we recruited the North Carolina Baptist Men's Camp, which is a tremendous asset to our community in terms of they go out into the community and they do great work in terms of ministering for people who need help with building assistance and wheelchair ramps and things of that nature. And then we recruited the American Legion World Series, and I'm real proud that Shelby, North Carolina is now the permanent home to the American Legion World Series, so you must come in August and see the best baseball you will ever see. And then we also, made our downtown into one, I think, that is the envy of many across the country because of our business-friendly our practices. In other words, what I mean to tell you is that I did what I said I was going to do. And when I tell you that I go to Washington to repeal Obamacare, I'm going to do my very best, my absolute very best to put this thing to bed, because it is hurting our country. It is really hurting people, and it needs to be repealed, period. When I say I want to go to Washington to work on the balanced budget amendment to the Constitution, that's exactly what I want to do. We need it. We need a line item veto so that the spending doesn't get out of hand when you have a balanced budget. And then I also believe really strongly the best thing I've seen so far to get us to that balanced budget in the meantime is the penny plan, which is a penny off of every dollar every year for the next 5 to 7 years, and you basically balance your budget. I believe that we need to put our military in superior ranking across all respects so that Russia does not feel like it has the opportunity to do just the kinds of things it's been doing recently. And then when I say that I want to work as well to appoint those kinds of judges that have the original intent in mind so that we do not see things like when our state passes an amendment and we don't see it overturned by some federal judge. The Senate is real key on this kinds of things. So that's what I mean when I say when I'm going to go to Washington, I want to go. I don't want to be one of those. I want to just go represent you, be a service to you, and work my heart out for you. And that's why I'm running. I served as our chairman in Cleveland County of our Republican Party. Before that, I was on the executive board and served as vice chairman. During that time as vice chairman was the very first time Cleveland County is a very Democratic party oriented. During that time, we for the first time, we went every office that was in the election for Republican, and that was no small feat. So I appreciate so much what you do here at the local level and all that you do to make our conservative values and push them forward. So I want to thank you so much for allowing me the 10 minutes that you've given me. It's been a real pleasure, and my wife and I are really honored to be here today. And I thank you, and I just encourage you to meet me more at tedforsenate.com. And if you would like to sign a sign-up sheet later on, we'll certainly do that. We won't bombard you, but we'll keep you up with information. But thank you very much, and God bless each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you for this great opportunity to talk to you here at Henderson County. My name is Greg Brannon, and I am also running for United States Senate on our side. We are right now at a constitutional crisis. Doesn't matter what the issue is. It's because the federal government usurped their power. The idea of federalism has been destroyed. I myself, we're talking about our party here. My mother actually had a Goldwater shirt on me when I was 4 years of age when she got to vote for the first man for president was Goldwater, which was a big deal in our house because she was raised in a Democratic household. And then being of California, her man Reagan was in '66 was our governor. So she used to implant those ideas of our founders in her head because those men were great leaders because they ran back, stood in shoulders of our founders. I am the first person in my family as well to go to college. My mom had when she was 19 years of age. 4 years later, had my brother. Single mom, South Central Los Angeles. But she understood this country is phenomenal. She understood what made it great was not succeeding, but the opportunity to get up every time you fall. Her rules were very simple. Go to church, go to school, or I'll kick your rear end. And yes, and as I said, I was very fortunate to be the first one to go to become a doctor in our family. My brother messed up. He became an attorney. I love saying that now that Snyder's in here. But my daughter's in law school now, so I got to back off on that one. My wife and I have been married 26 years. We have 7 children, 6 girls and a boy. My daughter's ages from 4 to 23. My boy's 21. We had the honor of adopting the last 3 from China. I've been an OBGYN for 26 years. I've delivered around 9,000 babies. In fact, one at 6:15 this morning in Cary. I've not slept in about 2.5 days, but that's okay. But why I'm running is very simple. My generation, I'm as well as Ted, I'm 53 as well. We have been a very selfish generation. We are going to pass on a less free America, if an America at all, to the 9,000 babies I delivered and my own children selfishly. It's unacceptable what we've done. So it led me about 5-6 years ago to ask a question. I think these questions are very important how we're going to go forward. Because I believe we're looking for not bureaucrats, policy wonks, but true leaders, statesmen who will honor their oath. But they cannot lead with that oath if they don't know what the Constitution is. That's actually a falsehood. If you don't know what the Constitution means, the original intent, you cannot lead. 2 questions are, who is sovereign? Because the sovereign is the source of all power. And what is the legitimate role of a government? The legitimate role. Both those are answered in the 2nd paragraph of our Declaration. The great sovereign, the Creator, made us in His image. We're endowed with certain inalienable rights, among those life. From the moment that sperm penetrates that egg and your DNA is formed, you're a human being, to natural passing, and everywhere in between. I have 2 little girls with cleft palates. Their quality of life is beautiful and perfect as God made them. No outside agency can say that quality does not exist. Next thing is liberty, with its freedom, responsibility, and then the pursuit of happiness, which is your dream. Live your life the way you want to live it, with its success and failures. The very next question is answered with the very next question. Sentence. What is the legitimate role of a government? It says to secure these rights. To what rights? The individual's rights, not the collective, the individual's rights. To secure these rights, a government instituted amongst men, driving their just powers for consent to the governed. So who's giving their consent? The sovereign. You are giving your consent, not to have masters, but have unbiased umpires keep the opportunity at the beginning equal. And the moment a government oversteps those bounds, another inalienable right is you have the opportunity to cast that off. Jefferson listed 28 things he called tyranny. Obamacare is tyranny. It attacks every fiber of our Declaration. I've been attacked a little bit in this primary that I'm talking about philosophy a lot. But without a philosophy or worldview, you have no foundational principles. Our Constitution, 11 years later, was based upon that philosophy. So Obamacare attacks life, puts a price tag on life they'll spend on you during your lifetime. It attacks your liberty. You must buy it to be a citizen. It attacks your property, your income. Now, I read every word of Obamacare. I also read every word of Dodd-Frank. I will promise you I read every word when I'm up there, or I do not vote on it. And if it's not constitutional, I vote no. But the sad part is today, we're being attacked in the most insidious of ways, from within. The Constitution is 6 pages. 6. As Henry said, it restrains the government, not the individual. And the Bill of Rights does not grant one single right. It just declares God-given natural rights in which the federal government can never, ever infringe upon, ever. And the moment it does, that's where this important idea of federalism is important. I want to know how the Constitution is put together, so I, being a crazy guy, I read the Convention Notes of 1787. 3 men kept notes in every single day in Philadelphia, Yates, Martin, and Madison. We don't have to argue when they discussed a fiat currency or gold. On August 6th, they voted gold 9-2. We don't have to argue what they discussed on foreign trade, what they discussed in September. You can read that. But Madison said it's not what they passed in Philadelphia. It's what the parties to the contract. The parties are over the agent. The parties are the states. So I read every state convention from 1787 to 1789. Ours in Hillsborough is phenomenal. The big crux of why we've messed up, why we stepped over, is because the 9th Amendment and the 10th Amendment, the crux to federalism, and Article 6, Clause 2 in the Constitution says, the Constitution is supreme law in the land and pursuant thereof. So in our convention, that was asked, what does that mean? It was answered by James Iredell, who later on was placed in the first Supreme Court by George Washington. If the federal government ever usurps their power and passes a law that's not enumerated, it is null and void in the state. The federal government is a product of the state government. The state government is a product of the sovereign. Who's that? You. That's why we're in this position. That's why I believe I'm the best candidate for this. I'm the only candidate in the country backed by Senator Paul and Senator Lee and Mick Hebby of Freedom Works. Gun Owners of America, National Association of Gun Rights, and Coulter, my church, Thomas Woods. This is not a game. I deal with life and death every single day. If I operated the way Congress does their responsibilities, it's not malpractice, it's criminal. It's criminal. So what we want to do is, I believe we need happy warriors. Our party is the party of Frederick Douglass, of Martin Luther King, of Susan B. Anthony. Our party's the party. Right now we have to decide, are we McConnell? Are we the progressive status of the party? Or are we Reagan and Goldwater and Taft and Coolidge? I think it's great, because when you stand firm in the constitutional principles, that builds a winning coalition. We're the only candidate who's beaten Ms. Hagan 5 months in a row, either beaten her or tied with her, the only one. And our margin are getting larger all the time. We have Freedom Works with 150,000 activists in North Carolina. We have over 72,000 people on Facebook. Our team has worked for Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, Ron Paul. It's been part of this kind of true grassroots movement. It's been successful. So what I'm asking you guys to do is do what Mr. Glenn Beck did for me. He quizzed the heck out of me. If an opportunity, I've been on that radio show twice. I'll be on the TV show this Wednesday. It was humbling. He said I was the best candidate he ever spoke to in his life. I know I'm just Greg Brannon who read the books. And I believe I am standing on the shoulders of giants. I'm inventing nothing. I know I'm made as his image. I know life is precious. I know we need men and women who are happy warriors, that are leaders and statesmen. You don't want my idea on education. You decide. But by the way, I know Common Core backwards and forwards. And I'm no Johnny-come-lately. That's Race to the Top, No Child Left Behind. I read Dewey's own writings. Again, Obamacare, I'm no Johnny. I read the thing. And as a practicing physician and as a patient, I know the details. It's affecting every part of our life. And it hurts the poorest of the poor. The silver plan in Obamacare, the silver plan, if you make $33,000 a year gross income, if you bring home $27,000, you must give Blue Cross Blue Shield, whoever the exchange is $4,750. It's a 70-30 plan. And therefore, when you add up all your deductibles, you end up giving, you must give roughly $8,000 to $9,000 of your after-tax dollars. To be a citizen of the state, unacceptable. We must stand up, understand what federalism is all about. As your senator, I'll be the ambassador from our sovereign state. I have a question to ask us. Franklin looked at a chair for 5 months that George Washington stood upon. He looked at it for 5 straight months in Philadelphia. And on that chair was half of a sun. And he asked that generation a question that we got to ask ourselves today concerning the American experiment, the American republicanism. Is that a sunrise or a sunset? I will not be part of the generation that makes this a sunset. Join us, gregbrannon.com. Thank you very much.
Yeah, if Jim and Ted are coming up here, I'm not sure the remote mic is working. It was on before. We're going to have the gentleman up here. I think what we'll do, Ed, let's set the clock for 10 minutes. Let's give ourselves 10 minutes if there are questions, whatever you want to do. And is that working?
I don't see the light on there. There it is. It is.
Is this? See, I'm afraid that might be turned off. So let's just do what we can from here. All right. And what? I'll tell you what I'll do.
That looks better.
We'll even out. Are you guys ready?
Oh, yeah.
There we go. All right. All right, Joe.
To the future senator from North Carolina. I don't know if it's the water there. I don't know if it's a special interest. But I am so disappointed in the past senators and congressmen that went to Washington and never adhered to our conservative values. Now, you're up here today, and we all got you on record. When you come back 5 years from now, I hope it's the same thing.
Okay. Well, I agree 100%. That's why I'm running. I trust nobody else ever again. I've given my Hippocratic Oath for 26 years. I fight for the sanctity of life every day. I've been honored to be part of a practice that built a base of 25,000 patients with my office manager, my nurses, my team, if I did not tell the truth to keep integrity. When I'm with that life every day, and all those little babies that don't make it home, or those women I'm talking about cancer, my integrity is all I have. That's why I will not ever sacrifice my integrity. I think the crucial part is you're our lobbyists. We're going to do our transparency now and be interviewed. If we're not going to be interviewed, we don't deserve this job. And I'm not going to come back in 5 years. I'm coming back probably in January, February after we win this thing.
I believe one of the problems is that people go up to Washington and then they just sort of live there, and that they forget where they came from. I have never forgotten where I come from. And I believe that it's so important that you keep in touch with the people. One of my goals as a senator will be to visit, at least try to, every year, to visit at least once every county in the state of North Carolina. I'm almost doing that right now. But it is so important, it is so crucial that you keep in touch. And that's why when I served as mayor, I term limited myself, because I believe one of the problems that we have in Washington right now is people go there and they just stay. They stay forever and ever and ever, and they never come back to their district, and that's why I would be in favor of term limits.
Sir, your question is just dramatic. It's at the heart of our campaign, our election. And here's why. If I had time, I would have mentioned it a while ago. Let's see you run as an individual person, Republican or otherwise, without some big group of people supporting you. I've not been one and done. I know that Lincoln was the paragon in this. You've got to come back. You've got to come back. You've got to be inexorable. Sang Freud, as our founding fathers would say, in this situation. I'm not going to name names, but if you look back at our U.S. senators, our Congress people, how did they become U.S. senators? Washington chose them. Good people. Have they done anything? Did they vote against NAFTA? No. Did they stop the people on Wall Street? No. Are they doing anything for the babies? No. We three will. But you know who they are. Wonderful folks, friends of mine, but by George, our country almost went down, folks. Really. Did you see the president and the future presidents coming out of the Oval Office after the 2008 debacle happened? They look like deer in a headlight. We have got a conglomerate of people in Washington who have been controlling our lives. All these meetings are wonderful, but we've got to do more, and you've got to do more at saying we've had enough of one group of people, one small party, dictating to us, and that's what has happened, and we have let them do it, and it's time to stop.
Can I just add one? If I can add one more thing, if I could. Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
I forgot to mention, let's try to keep our answers to a minute.
That's fine. Go ahead. I'll let.
If you are unsuccessful, will you support and work for the Republican nominee?
I absolutely will. This is too important for our country and for our state to allow bickering or partisanship between us or any disagreements we may have. This is something that is crucial for our country. We have got to win this November election, and regardless of who gets it, as I said, any one of us is good, and any of us will be far better than Kay Hagan. So we have got to get together and win this election come November.
Without a question, we're becoming like brothers up here. I'm really delighted to see that you have these folks, and I'm so taken by these gentlemen beside me and the other candidates too. So we're going to be all together.
Two things you can never sacrifice, life and a constitutional. That's the party. That's everybody's primary saying that. It's a no-brainer. We got to win.
Nobody seems to be addressing the Federal Reserve. I hear talks against Wall Street, but the real cause is the banking cabal in the Federal Reserve. What will you do to get rid of it?
they have been the power, dear, they have been the power behind the throne. Now with Chairman Mellon coming on board, you see us being, our economy, our monetary policy being micromanaged by this group of folks, just like the whole rendition thing, the whole assassination thing. Who's making these decisions? What colonel in Washington is making these decisions? What group of people on the Federal Reserve are making the monetary policy that obviates and supersedes the fiscal policy of the Congress? This will be changed. Trust us. We'll try, any one of us three are going to change that.
Well, that's the 3 crimes in the Constitution: treason, piracy, and counterfeit. The Fed does all 3. Okay. I will eliminate the Fed. From 1792 to 1913, our dollar increased 17% on a constitutional gold-silver standard. From 1914 to today, it's down 96 to 98%. The Fed must go, and that's why the 16th Amendment must go, because don't forget, the enforcement arm of Obamacare is the IRS.
The Federal Reserve is way out of control. It's headed now by a Keynesian person, and I think that they absolutely have to have an audit. They've never had an audit to my knowledge. I think that's a no-brainer. And I think once that happens and they see what's been going on up there, there will be some major changes that occur.
Is this good practice? Sure. You like this?
Yeah.
I do this all day.
All
This is
right.
the best thing ever.
It's fine.
Because those who won't do this, no joke, should not be elected.
Yeah, we're fine.
All right, let's do, in the interest of time, I want to give them enough time to answer one more question. And what I'd like to do is, what's my bid? My wife's birthday is tomorrow. Ruth?
Nepotism? Nepotism. Or a smart man.
Where do you stand on immigration?
America's built on legal immigration. Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, Article 1, Section of the Constitution, the federal goal to protect the sovereign borders. End of story, bottom line. And the people that have amnesty destroyed California. That's when they hear comprehensive plan, that's a key word. The answer is no. But we have to understand, the cultures of America are great. We're still the most free immigration country the world's ever seen. But legal immigration built this great culture. I think you're next.
One of the primary purposes of government is to protect itself and to protect our borders. And this right now is something I think that has absolutely got to be done. We've got to protect our borders. Right now we're in a situation that we've almost created ourselves, because we have almost invited people to come across the border because we haven't enforced the laws. So we need to have a strong border. We need to enforce the laws that are on the books, and if people are caught illegally here, they need to be sent back. I don't believe in amnesty, and I do believe that we need to change things in terms of allowing people to come, because it's not just people from South America, Central America. These are people who are coming in from other places, and they're possible terrorists and so forth, and they're coming in illegally, and we've got to put a stop to that. And then that's the primary goal of our federal government, is to protect our borders.
Well said. Well said indeed. Mr. Obama has ceded our foreign policy to the European Union, and you see what's happened over there. You see what Russia's done. Incrementally, they're assessing over into what will, I guess, be one day England. I say that to make a point. The federal government further has ceded the responsibility for our borders to New Mexico and Arizona. There are certain things states are not supposed to do. The federal government has a purpose of protecting our borders, preserving our sovereignty, and doing only those things that local, state, and local government cannot do. We are responsible as people of the United States for letting this happen. I don't mean to be blaming you folks, I'm blaming all of us. We are responsible for the leadership we put in Washington who have allowed this to happen to our borders. It's time that we did something about it. It's time that you did something about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before they leave the stage, let's express to them our thanks for them coming today.